Well, Mark Kristoff, Chief Executive of Traxys, thanks so much for joining us for this discussion today at IMARC. Well, just to begin with, maybe talk us through the issue that the world is facing right now when it comes to battery materials and the global supply situation.
Yeah, I think we're at a very interesting point in the cycle. You had uh, the perception that there was going to be very fast adoption, mirroring what was going on in China in the West. And I think what we found is that adoption rate has been slower than anticipated in the West. So you're seeing kind of reduced consumer acceptance of the platforms, and I think there are a lot of different factors that are driving that. Residual value depreciation the day out the showroom floor, I think, are leading to some of those consumer indecisive behavior around purchasing EV platforms. This is, of course, translated into significant reduced consumption of many of the raw materials. And just as an order of reference, the cobalt price today hit a 8-year low. So the market trended up as high as $45 a pound, and today is trading below $10 a pound for certain grades. Lithium hit a high of $80,000 a ton, and today is trading at $8,000 to $10,000 a ton. So you've had a very marked deterioration in the price deck of many of these materials. Nickel during the LME crisis a little over 2 years ago hit a high of $100,000 a ton intraday. Nickel is trading around $16,000 a ton. So I think this reduced adoption and the corresponding demand profile has caused a significant retrenchment in the raw material price deck for many of the key battery raw materials.
Look, we're seeing this ongoing kind of issue with slumping EV sales and some concerns around these battery materials. How is this actually impacting Traxys business and how will it over the coming years?
Yeah, listen, we think that the trend of decarbonization is here to stay. There's never been a market that we participated in that has behaved in the traditional hockey stick fashion. There is volatility, there are setbacks, there are geopolitical issues that I think are driving consumer sentiment and the like. So we're not surprised to see a reduced adoption rate. I think the infrastructure build out requirements for charging stations and the like to give the consumer the confidence that you have the mission critical mileage or kilometers in the vehicle to get to and from work or your different destinations is a big part of that. And that really just takes time to address that. So, we need to see the corresponding infrastructure build out. And then I think the adoption rate will normalize. And one of the good aspects of the price retrenchment is the cost of the battery has come down effectively. I think there was a perception that there's not enough lithium in the world to support the anticipated demand, or that there won't be enough cobalt in the world. And I think you've seen industry address the ability to bring on new production assets, and the surplus of material versus the demand profile today is what's translating into the weaker price deck for these materials. But at the end of the day, it makes the EV platform more competitive versus the combustion engine.
Well, let's talk about the whole issue of upstream production. And is there a risk potentially of over extracting some of these ores, given the ability to recycle a lot of the materials used in these batteries and repurpose them?
Yeah, that's a great point, Tom. I think ultimately you need a significant amount of raw material coming into the system until the market matures. You find obsolescence, and the recycling supply base is robust enough to support significant scaled recycling. What's unique about the lithium-ion battery manufacturing process is the scrap generation at initial production is relatively significant. Depending on the producer, it can range from 20 to 35% of a scrap ratio out of the door. So there is that clean home scrap available immediately, but it does take time as the gigafactories ramp and as the supply chain fills up. So you do need primary production to supplement that. And the growth prospects, if the West follows what's happened in China, are still quite material for the EV platforms. And I think the outlier in the global EV demand trend is really China continues to grow very dramatically. They're producing high quality automobiles that are operating on an EV platform that's I think well introduced, certainly into the Chinese market.
In terms of the recycling and the repurposing of some of these batteries, who's leading this right now globally, and what can the rest of the world potentially learn from this?
Now, I think this is a really interesting tipping point, and I think it's informative to look at the general recycling trends in the steel industry or the superalloy industry, where some of the products also have a dual application. And those markets start with very little recycling taking place. If you look at it, mature markets in the West and in the US and in Western Europe, the scrap ratios for producing stainless steel, in many cases, the stainless mills are using 50 up to 85% of their raw material feed is in the form of scrap. The aluminum industry has a very robust recycling footprint. And I think those are good examples of what the lithium-ion battery space could look like. Now, recycling lithium-ion batteries is a little more complex than basic specialty steel or even superalloy recycling, because you start with a component which has certain characteristics that certain jurisdictions deem as hazardous materials. We've obviously read about the fire concerns around lithium-ion batteries. So, as you process the spent lithium-ion batteries, there's a safety concern. It has to be done in a thoughtful way. The routes to recycling, are quite varied, and there's a lot of novel technologies that are being developed and explored. You have the kind of historical pyrometallurgical processing. You are now going to a hydrometallurgical processing, and there's some very big names in the business that are pursuing those routes. But you also have some very sophisticated solvent extraction and electron beam processing technologies that are, at lab scale and bench test scale levels, and some getting into demonstration plants, very robust capabilities to recycle the lithium-ion battery materials. And I think the winners are still yet to be determined. I think there'll probably be different regional champions, and I would suspect that there will be a diversity of technologies that are applicable and ultimately win. But we're in the very early days, and it would be too soon to declare who were the winners in that space at this time.
Mark Kristoff, obviously, as we've been mentioning, the geopolitical hot potato of critical minerals is not going away anytime soon. Where do you see the two major parties in the lead up to the US election on this issue of preserving, advantages when it comes to critical minerals processing? And I guess what could we expect come 2025 with a new president in the White House?
Yeah, I think, Tom, the U.S. has been characterized by a very partisan political system with polar opposite views on many of the topics of the day. One, I think, distinct exception to that trend or that rule that we've been observing is the understanding and the focus on critical minerals and the importance of having trade bloc or regional supply chains to address those concerns. And you've seen a recent bill introduced on a bipartisan basis by both the Republican and the Democratic parties that are really supporting and insisting that government agencies start to partner with private industry to look for critical supply chain solutions. So there's an awareness that I think crosses party borders, and I would anticipate that this trend is going to continue apace, irrespective of who is in the White House come January. And I think I think it's a very close race and hard to tell, but I think it really doesn't matter as it relates to the critical materials focus and concern that's in the markets and in the U.S.
And just finally, Mark, in terms of Australia's role in this critical minerals supply chain, where do you see Australia really fitting in terms of its most important minerals, which will be critical for this ongoing transition?
Listen, Australia has been a tremendous trade partner with the West for many, many years. Obviously, has developed a very important supply position, particularly in iron ore for China. But with a mining-friendly perspective in Australia and certain jurisdictions, I think there's a great role for Australia to fill in being that trade bloc friendly supply base in products that will cross the product requirements, additional nickel, additional lithium. The spodumene production in Western Australia is world class and will continue to play an important role in that supply base. So I think Australia is uniquely positioned, has made significant infrastructure investments around rail and port capabilities, which I think will have to continue, but are a great starting point. And I don't think there's anybody that questions the strength of the alliance, certainly between Australia and the United States and the Western world as a whole.
Certainly a lot of eyes on the United States' ongoing role as a leader when it comes to these critical mineral supply chains. Mark Kristoff, Chief Executive of Traxys, thanks so much for your insights here at IMARC. Always great to talk, and all the best for 2025.
Tom, thank you very much. Great to see you again, and thank you for your time.